Listen to The Brew for the best classic hits of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. KOKL, Okmulgee, Oklahoma.
SJ, welcome to Mvskoke Radio, your weekly source for tribal and community news, interesting guests and discussions, plus a local events calendar. Ishche, Stongo, Gary Fife, Jaho Jifkidos, Mvskoke Radio, Mabu Hedjidowedskis. Welcome to our program. We have a major change in our lineup today. We were going to be talking with some folks about fire safety, which we're still in the fire season, and a couple of other things, but we got the opportunity to do our annual end of the year discussion with our principal chief, James Floyd, though we're getting a phone message alarm going off, I hope. Isn't the wildfires getting at us? Yeah. Thank you, Chief Floyd. We appreciate you making time in what I know has got to be a berserk schedule.
My pleasure. I'm glad to be here, and actually glad to be preempted by the fire people because we finally got rain, and
yes,
and that's very helpful for them. I actually saw them outside doing other things than firefighting yesterday, so that's great.
Yeah, I talked to those guys a couple of years ago. Well, last year was it? And they had some tribe down from northern Michigan, and boy, you could tell those accents. You could tell the accents. All right, well, let's quit fooling around here. First of all, of course, our sidewalk superintendent report on the council house. It's still there, folks, and today it's wet. So, Chief Floyd, we'll give you the first few minutes here to give us kind of a state of the state message, if you want to take a few there.
Sure, be glad to. Again, East J, everybody, and hope you're all doing well, all that's listening, and that I want to wish them all a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year, and hope that everyone's safe. We have already experienced a couple fires from people, so light safety and tree safety and things, be careful out there. We don't need any more. We want everybody to be happy and enjoy the holidays. So my best wishes to everyone. Maybe I should start with the council house because it's, we're right by Council Square. And we are now inside, finishing up the completion of the restoration. We are in the process of obtaining original furniture or manufacturing original duplicates. We've been fortunate that several people in the community stepped up or just came by and gave us a couple of pieces of furniture that was in the original council house, and so the company that is working on the interior have used that as a model to manufacture duplicates. So when it is open to the public later in 2018, what they see is going to be just, either an original or a replica of an original, right down to the curves and everything. So I think everyone's going to be very pleased about that. We've had a lot of interest about it. We had the tree lighting not long ago, so I think that's going to draw people back down here, and especially our citizens who want to come back home and see that. That's very important, and so we've got it pretty much done. So, of course, there's, probably 1,000 other things going on. We are completing the 19th council, and they just had their meeting last Saturday, and so, I want to give a big thanks to them in working with me in these past 2 years. I think we would not have been where we are today without their cooperation, and so, I think I've been very fortunate, me and the second chief both, that we've been able to have a good working relationship with them, and one built on openness and honesty, and and that's really helped us get the support we need to start projects or to make new laws that we needed in place. And so I want to thank them very much. Now, as we go into 2018, I think one thing that is going to be very significant right at the outset is the master plan that we, with the support of the National Council, undertook this past year. And it will be completed soon and will be given to the National Council in January for their acceptance. The master plan is really taking a look at the lands that the nation owns within this area of Okmulgee. And the master plan is both a short and long-term look at what we could do with the properties that we have to best utilize them. And I think that citizens will be well pleased with that. It goes everywhere from the Omniplex to, we obtain land for the cemetery. We'll be showing what the cemetery location will be, and then we've already got the architects that are ready to begin on designing that. That 40-acre parcel, by the way, will contain 12.5 acres of a veteran cemetery. So we've got our application in with the VA for the grant that will continuously provide money to us to operate that, and then the remaining 28 acres will be configured to be a citizen's cemetery. So, that's responding to the needs that we've heard from people, and so I think that's going to be great as well. And then speaking of the cemeteries, I just wanted to thank the cemetery crew, because at this point they have now identified and cleared and fenced and protected I think 253 cemeteries within the nation at the present time, and counting. There's others. And so in looking at our culture, both the council house and the cemetery and the cemetery restoration are things that we wanted to do to preserve what we have, and so that future generations can look at that and know that we did our best in being stewards of our past, and we'll continue to do that. We'll also, we've enjoyed economic success, some new business enterprises that have started, and especially this past year, and we'll continue to do that and look for ways to diversify and employ people. And it's those types of things that I'll be talking more about in the State of the Nation in January.
Okay. All right, let's start, I guess, from the top down. Let's tackle the new federal administration. The president has shown his colors, so to speak, I think, and it hasn't necessarily been friendly to Native American interests. It's more business-oriented and things like that, with some holdups on land, into trust requests, change in national monuments. We're still waiting for an assistant secretary to be confirmed, I believe.
That's correct.
And other key slots within the administration that deal with Native affairs to be filled. Other than that, it's his guy is who he is, and his own personality sometimes gets a hold of him, I think, and bites him in the backside. But what do you see now? NCAI said let's kind of wait and see how it works out. And then we see things like the word Pocahontas popping up in some really nasty places. So what's your assessment of the White House and the administration? Well,
I was at the White House a few weeks ago when they had a summit or a conference on veterans issues. It did open the door for us. I hope to, with NCAI, go back and meet with the Secretary of the Veterans Affairs and clarify some of the issues that Native veterans face, and where they have initiatives, but how we can better utilize those initiatives. Even the cemetery project, we're 14th on the list, and the first 13 are all either new or expanded existing national cemeteries. So I think there's got to be some balance. And tribal cemetery needs, which are new, which ours will be a new startup cemetery, should be competing with them and be in the queue much further up than 14th. And so I think, especially when you have a tribe who's willing to invest and their own funds, this is like a joint venture similar to we have at the Eufaula Clinic. And so it's just, they need to have that awareness. Now, our approach, or my approach, has been to not so much focus on the White House, but to focus on the elected officials and those in the administration and talk to them, because they're the ones who's kind of grinding out the work. And so it's required pretty significant time and travel to be up there, but I think it's paying off for us because you have two different environments in a way. You have the elected officials who, many of those are going to be coming up in 2 years for election, and so, or actually next year for election, and so they're concerned, but at the same time they have to produce some things. And so particularly with American Indian issues, Native Alaska issues, we want to be there and help influence that. I have met with the nominee for the BIA as well as the Indian Health Service and spoken to them. We hope to have the BIA nominee at the Intertribal Council in January, the NCAI president, and possibly the Indian Health Service nominee all attend so that they can be seen by the Intertribal Council of the 5 civilized tribes, because we represent more than 750,000 people. So it's not insignificant, and they realize that. And so we hope to get them in front of us and see who we are and know more about us. And then, again, the staffs, the committees that are doing the work, there's some very significant things that are going on. I think we've made some good progress on the Stigler Act, or also known as the Act of 47, regarding the transfer of restricted property and blood quantum. I think we have that prepared for House markup this week, I believe, and hopefully it can be accomplished before they go home on Christmas break, so that in January it can be voted on the House side and sent over to the Senate. We've met with the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs about this, and I think we've addressed all the issues, which weren't many, that people had, and shown that, of the, all the tribes in the country, you got 5 that this only applies to, and it's the blood quantum issue on trust property and restricted property. And so I think we've taken care of that. Congressman Cole has taken the lead on the House side, done a very good job of it. And so we've been working those angles and making sure that we talk to the people who are going to have to put the writing, on the paper so that eventually when it does go to the White House, it represents what we want.
While we're discussing Capitol Hill there, I'd like to know your opinion on what the Oklahoma delegation has been doing as far as Native affairs. Is it supportive, favorable? Is it other side of the coin? Are they rather reluctant to back some issues and things like that? We're talking Mr. Cole and Imhoff and Langford and et cetera. So what's your feel?
Well, we have 2 that have much influence in our own, in this district, Mark Wayne Mullen, who is very much involved in interior affairs with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. I make sure that I meet with him every time I go, and he's been very open, and we've had open discussions about issues. We don't always agree on things, but I give him my perspective, and I give him the perspective of not only Mvskoke Creek views, but in relationship to the policy nationally and how that could affect all the nations. And so he listens. And so knowing that we can sit down and talk and discuss things has been very helpful. We've talked about healthcare. We've talked about the Bureau of Indian Affairs. We've talked about energy policies with him. Congressman Cole, as I said, is the one who introduced the Stigler Act. He's working the Stigler Act. He's leading that. He's out talking to other members of the House to make sure that the issues that they may have are addressed. That's another office that we can get into and talk to. So, on the House side of the 5 in Oklahoma, those two very much are key people for us. Representative Lucas as well with agriculture. And so we make sure that we speak with them. And then on the Senate side, Senator Langford's been very open to us and supportive. We've also talked with Senator Inhofe's staff and made sure that they're aware of some of the issues that we have and get their perspectives. I know Senator Inhofe seems to be very busy on committee work, and so it's hard to catch him. Senator Langford sits on the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs, and so with his staff, we can easily talk to them and Inhofe's staff, and we've met with them jointly. The last time I was there, talked about some of the issues. And so they're aware, they know who we are, they know how to contact us, and they know that we respond. I think this year, I don't know how many letters I've written about policy changes, anticipated policy changes, or changes without policy, and which concerns me. And so I let them know about it, and I'll continue to do that because as a former federal employee, some of these things that are being done without the law or the rules and regulations, you shouldn't be doing. However, I've caught them in one of them, and I let them know you can't do that without having that in regulation. So that's what I'm guarding against. I think that may be coming from the administration in the White House.
All right, let's take a second to examine one of those items of the 47 Act. Now, there are concerns that it would impact citizens who lose restricted status on their land if their heirs fall below a certain blood quantum. So where is that now, and what does that future look like?
So the problem that we're trying to address is that it's the blood quantum issue, that if the blood quantum of the citizen is less than half, then it falls out of restricted status and goes to fee status, which then becomes taxable property. So as it stands right now, the law was introduced in January. There's been a hearing I attended with Chief Baker from the Cherokee Nation. The committee report has been filed. It's going to mark up this week, which means they're going to look at any wording changes. The Department of the Interior weighed in with some technical changes, and each one of the leaders of the 5 tribes signed off on those changes, agreeing to those 2 weeks ago. And there were 2 scheduled markups on the Interior Affairs Committee this month on the House side, and so we wanted it for the second one. So it should be this week, and I hope today or tomorrow before they go home. And that will then complete the House work. And then they will vote on that, and then it will be sent to the Senate. It doesn't have it's a simple change in a way because it just strikes the wording of blood quantum and puts us on the same level and footing as the other tribes of the United States, and protects us from further loss of restricted land into the fee status. And so of the 5 tribes, we're the largest ones, we're the largest nation that still has restricted land, and we want to keep it that way.
Yeah, I know it has been a matter of major concern. Even some members of my own family have said, what happens?
Mine as well.
We're going to get taxed on our own land after all the years. All right, let's move on to some other issues. Quickly, have you any updates on the efforts to lift the freeze on federal money for Johnson O'Malley?
The Johnson O'Malley bill has been taken up. We made comment about that. Its current status as of today, I'm not sure. But the last I saw that and last we spoke about that with the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs is there's several things that were important to us. One is an updated count. Evidently, it's been about 15 years since Johnson O'Malley program had really kind of the census count of the students that are in Johnson O'Malley programs across the United States. Wording has now been put into the Johnson O'Malley bill that they will update that, and I think they'll see a significant increase. We'll see a significant increase, and that will help us in resources within the Creek Nation and our 67 school districts that we have. So that is there. The continued funding, the continued authorization of Johnson O'Malley, it just needs to have the completed action of the Congress, and they are following the regular order of things, and sometimes that's slow, but they've had the committee report on the Senate and House side. I think the next step is just to have that passed on either the Senate or House side, and then a conference, and then it should be ready to go to the president for signature.
Okay. The administration has charted its course on environmental lands and other topics, but there's one that made national headlines all over the place, not regarding any particular specific issue, but the president used the word Pocahontas in what is being considered a racial slur right in front of 3 Dene veterans and the portrait of Andrew Jackson. What's your reaction to that happening and what we've heard back from the White House?
Well, I was up there that week, and actually there that day when the Navajo Code Talkers, the 3 of them met with the president. It was a very unfortunate event. I've talked to someone that's in the White House about that, and I think it's poor preparation. One, in front of the portrait,
Indian killer.
You would have, to me, in my own personal opinion, a junior staffer should have picked up on that and focused him underneath maybe the portrait of George Washington, at least. And I think the other is preparation of the president. When he speaks off the cuff, that's when you get into these things. And he went off cuff on this deal, and we have what we have. Now, the National Congress of the American Indians weighed in on that. That's the same week we had the meeting with the veterans. There was, as I was there's people talking about boycotting the veterans meeting, and I thought about that as well. But then again, I thought my absence would hurt the help and the voice for the veterans, and so I did attend 2 days later, and I met with NCAI, and I agreed with their position. The NCAI president was there. I sat right next to him, and we had the meeting. But the event that they had before, it speaks volumes itself.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are all kinds of red flags and fireworks coming up over that one still. All right, now let's go back to one of the heavy subjects that our tribe has had to face, one you inherited, and that's the health budget. Mm-hmm. I guess we want to know where we are with that. Have things settled down? We hear talks about loans to cover part of it, and then a decline in the amount owed, I guess, some progress. So maybe you could fill us in and kind of give us that economic profile.
Sure, I'd be glad to. The health picture has improved tremendously, I'd say. When I came into office, we did have to take a loan. And when we say loan, it isn't that just as a bailout. We had the joint venture project at Eufaula, which is, very much on track and under budget for its completion. And we had under construction the Okemo Hospital. There was money in that loan, so we had to restructure that loan. And so we restructured it, got a lower interest rate, and then we've been able to pay down, I think, $20 million of that loan amount. And so that has come from the resources generated within the health department. The health department and through the Secretary of Health, they do a tremendous job now of understanding the business of healthcare. Now, we want the patients who use our system not to, have to understand all the business of the healthcare. We want them to show up, be treated well, and promptly, and get the respect they need, so that they can go back home, but they know that they've received good care. We're fortunate to have these new facilities now. The Okemo Outpatient Clinic is open in that new facility. Things are going well there. And so it hits on some things that we need to do on the business side. Was one, make sure that we're operating efficiently. Make sure that we are receiving the third-party resources that we need, whether that be from private insurance, cash, because we are, a public hospital in all three of our licenses. And so identification of insurance. We've cut dramatically the no-show rate. We're calling the patients ahead of time. And so our kept appointment rate is going up. Our lost appointment times are going down. So people are utilizing the system. And so efficiency doesn't mean that we're operating cheaply. It just means that they're operating at optimum ability to get patients in, to make sure that we're doing our best in providing the supplies, the materials, the personnel. We've been able to recruit some very good providers, and so we'll continue to do that. But the picture is much improved. And I know that during the State of the Nation, I'll talk more about that in our quarterly report that will come up for the first quarter. I think they'll see some good improvement there as well. And looking forward, we have even some greater opportunities coming up for us. And I think that's why I want to make sure that I have a good relationship with the new Indian Health Service director, because he needs to know about us and what we're doing. We have the electronic medical record in place, and that product that we've modified greatly is also the same product that the Department of Veterans Affairs and DOD will be using in the future. And so Indian Health Service is looking at our product because, maybe it was just good planning or sheer luck, I don't know, but the product that we have is really the product that they need. And so we may be able to benefit from that, both from the corporation that manufactures the product, but also the Indian Health Service, who's wanting now to have people come and look at our record system. And so I think that'll bring favorable attention to us as well. The phone system now is all voice over the internet. You can call from Okemo to Coweta with 4 digits. Any of our healthcare facilities now can be reached in-house with just by dialing 4 digits. That's cut the cost of our phone bill, and we'll be showing the return on that. Just the savings of renegotiating our phone costs covered the cost of the new phone system, which is now reducing our phone bill. So, those are the efficiencies that go on kind of behind the scenes. But having a 4-digit phone system, if the patient from, let's say, Coweta goes to the Okemo Clinic, we can easily look at their electronic medical record and call the clinic with just 4 digits and get them on the phone. And so it's positioned us well. And so those things, I think, are things that are very good things that are in place that will be lasting improvements.
One of the changes that I think I've noticed in my visits to the clinics is there seems to be a improvement in the morale. Staff members that I would talk to informally and, of course, off the record said it's much better now. They don't feel like it's, I think I heard the term repressive once. Somebody tell them what to wear and the shoes they can wear and can't wear and makeup and all kinds of stuff. Now they feel like they can just relax and concentrate on the job. Mm-hmm. So that's, that's a positive sign that we'd like to hand you there.
And I think we've given them the tools they need to do their job and the latitude they need to do need to have to do their work. We've got initiatives to raise the morale as well. So I think those things have led to some of those comments, as well as some from patients. They can get in, be near their appointment time, and be seen.
Right. Of course, I have heard, of course, the workload has not changed much. It's still a lot of demand versus a lot of ability to supply, but that's a challenge we'll have to deal with in a different fashion, I should imagine. Let me change your subjects again. Earlier in the year, we heard that the suit by the Cherokee freedmen was pretty much upheld, and that the tribe would have to admit to people who are, on the rolls and former slave descendants of slaves who should have been entitled to service and now are. And I know there has been a movement here within the Creek Nation for some of the same kinds of folks, freedmen here, to also gain that recognition and service. So what are your thoughts there?
Well, I think that first we need to understand all the issues involved. The Cherokee Nation decision from the Treaty of 1866 was based upon their treaty. Each of the 5 tribes had an individual treaty in 1866. And when you read those, particularly Article 2, you will see that each one is worded differently. And the sequence was intentional because Chickasaw and Choctaws were seen as union-friendly tribes, so they went first. Cherokee was third, Mvskoke Creek was fourth, Seminoles fifth, because we were seen as Confederate, or unfriendly to the nation, which is, I think, is an insult to me because we didn't have a choice. But nonetheless, each one is a little bit different. Now, I know there's still ongoing issues with the Cherokee, and so we watch that. In regard to Mvskoke Creek, there's certain things I can do. There's certain things that can be done by the council and with authorities. I can't just unilaterally make a decision and sign a letter because I don't have that authority. So, but I can communicate with the National Council, and they can consider what they want to do. And I think we'll probably see something with the new council that will be looking at that issue.
Okay, let's shift gears again here. We have been aware of a couple major issues that I think we need to deal with. First of all, let's go to the Murphy v. Royal case, which has implications on the jurisdiction of the Creek Nation over the 11 counties. It's a horrible oversimplification saying, okay, Creek Nation has jurisdiction everywhere, and you guys have to cut a deal with us to arrange the legalities of police coverage and whatever else. So what do you see there? Where are we right now, and what direction are we headed?
Well, I can't comment on the case too much because it's still in litigation, and it is a Mvskoke case. But it's also a Murphy case. So Mr. Murphy has an attorney, and that person is really the lead counsel in this case. Mvskoke Creek, we joined that case along with the Seminole Nation, and we've had 2 favorable rulings on that. But I think maybe the on the street comments or in the media comments about everything going amok and going wild, and Mvskoke Creek Nation is suddenly going to take over everything in Mvskoke Creek Nation. No, I think that what you're going to see is continued collaboration with all the governments, and once this thing, if it goes to the Supreme Court or not, and once we feel that the decision is going to stand, then we have to prepare not just for the immediate things that we may change. And I doubt there'll be many immediate changes, but we're looking at things 20 to 40 years down the road. Regarding law enforcement, I think we've had some great communication with them. We have, I think at last count, 33 agreements with law enforcement agencies, and I think we have 18 left to go. Chief Hawkins has been talking to law enforcement entities, and these other 13 should be signed soon. That's a benefit to all citizens, regardless of who you are, because we actually have kind of duplicate law enforcement and the ability to cooperate, whether it's Indian land or not Indian land, in carrying out law enforcement. And, those things come up any second. And so it's allowed us to be, I think, more cooperative in law enforcement activities. And this is one of the things that I've messaged to the congressional leaders, is that not only Mvskoke Creek, but the other 4 tribes are also looking at extending the coverage of their agreements so that all of eastern Oklahoma are covered regardless of what decision that we have. And so, there's a lot of work going on. Like I said, some of the litigation I can't comment on, but these agreements are something that we're pursuing because it's in the best interest of everybody.
For listeners who are not familiar with that particular issue, it started with a murder conviction in Tulsa County, was it?
McIntosh County.
McIntosh, yes. Yeah. And their defense attorneys argued that the case should have been tried in federal courts or even tribal courts, since the defendant was a Mvskoke citizen. And therefore, the state of Oklahoma did not have legal jurisdiction to do that. And lo and behold, an appeals court upheld their stance, and also adding the language that there was no clear, quote, disestablishment, unquote, of the Creek Reservation. Now that's got huge implications as far as I could tell, just kind of letting it hit me in the face there. It's so it's presenting a challenge in fulfilling that obligation and protecting citizens, but also in setting up a structure to deal with it. It's like, how, whose cops are in charge here, which court gets them, and so these are the deals you've been working on to get that cooperative arrangement set up. Right.
We've done that with law enforcement. We have, as a nation, met with the federal districts, the eastern and northern districts that cover the Mvskoke Creek Nation, and the U.S. Attorney's offices, and strengthened our relationships there. So I think, as an assurance to the public, even going beyond our own citizens, is that there will be no gap. There's not going to be lawlessness in the Mvskoke Creek Nation or anything going unpunished. It's going to get punished. And we will work out which entity will prosecute, charge, or whatever, or arrest individuals. And so I think beyond some of the things that we see in print or people speaking about it, being fearful of it, the opposite is actually occurring, that there's more cooperation going on in eastern Oklahoma, and we want that. We want that to continue. We're working as the 5 tribes together to make sure that the state is assured that, this isn't just something that instantly popped up, that the history of the 5 tribes with the state of Oklahoma and as good citizens, of members of the state of Oklahoma, citizens of the state. So we're very vested anyway. So we want things to be strengthened and to have in place a continuous system. And I think then they will see that in reality, and that should kind of work down some of these things where people are giving the extreme views of this.
All right. Let me shift to a different subject here, one that comes down from a national scene, I suppose, and has reared its ugly head here now. And that's the issue of sexual harassment. We've seen a number of different politicians and entertainment types and all kinds of people now being charged with not behaving as they should toward primarily women. But and now we've seen allegations being raised here among the National Council. And one of the responses of the Department of Human Resources, which kind of caught me off guard, was that they do take action but didn't define when, and said there were 2 actions taken, but there hasn't been anything in like 18 months. And I know that there are the water cooler kind of talk going around, and of course our own editorial staff has said, well, you know, there were a couple of major league examples in the former administration where executives, people talked about these things happening, and all of a sudden there were quiet resignations. And we heard nothing back from anybody, in particular, I guess HR sort of just shut the doors, and we heard nothing. It seemed like if there are these kinds of issues popping up, somebody should be saying something rather than what amounts or looks like a cover-up. So what's your assessment of the situation, and where should HR be on these kinds of things?
Well, you know, I would push back on the cover-up because I think we've been more than open. And I think my policy is clear. We have zero tolerance.
Well, before you get too far, I think it was under the former administration that we saw, and we saw it in writing and a couple of times.
So our approach, being the second chief and our administration, is to go in and make sure that we have a clear policy in place. We wanted to make sure we have zero tolerance. We're not going to put up with that. We don't need to. The workplace should be one that's healthy, that's lets people do their job. Similarly, we talked about healthcare. They just need to come to work, know they got a safe environment, and go to work and do their job, because our job is to serve citizens. And in respect to human resources, we can't publicly say, because of the privacy laws, what was done. We can talk about the number of reported cases, and I'll go into a little bit of detail. What we do when cases are reported is they convene a team. They look at the allegations. They look at evidence. They're kind of empowered to conduct interviews, to dig deep, to find out if there's substance to the allegations. If so, what's the degree of that? And we have taken action in every case that's been brought forward. We've not let that sit. We've not let that go unnoticed. And again, we also regularly communicate our policy. We try to do it every 6 months. In 2018, I think there's 2 significant things that our employees and citizens should be aware of. Is one, that we will be establishing an 800 number, so that if anything comes up, this will be, and they can report it anonymously. We're in the process right now of entering into a contract with someone that will be completely off-site, completely unattached to the nation, but someone with experience in dealing with these types of issues that can hear these complaints and begin to work them up, so then they can be brought back and a team of people review that. So it gives the employees the ability to be anonymous and report things that they may be afraid to. So it takes the fear factor out of that. And the other is training. We will be bringing in someone soon to do harassment training, not just sexual harassment training, bullying and things like that go on in the workplace, because we don't want it. And so we're working on those 2 things, and I think within the month you'll see more information about that, because, again, we want a healthy workplace here. We don't need this. I'm not going to tolerate it. And if anybody's out there right now and this is going on, we'll find you and you'll be gone, because we don't need it in the workplace.
Okay, let me clarify a point here before we take a break. The current issue being discussed is at the National Council, and not necessarily, it's not an employee issue.
Right, and I really can't speak for the National Council.
Right.
They have their own processes, and
we'll talk to those folks too. But let me take a real short break here, and we'll be back with more of our discussion with Chief James Floyd. So please stay with us here on Mvskoke Radio on 1240 The Brew.
As we come to the close of another year, the Mvskoke Creek Nation wants to thank the listeners and the citizens of this community who have supported our services and our programs. The Mvskoke Creek Nation plays a huge role in this community and in the whole state. In 2018, we hope to continue our relationships and our partnerships and welcome new ones. So from the great Mvskoke Creek Nation, Mado.
One Fire Casino in Okmulgee offers Ladies' Day every Monday with $5 match play, VIP days for seniors on Tuesdays, Lunchtime match plays on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and several other great drawings and prizes throughout the weekend. Don't forget to take advantage of spinning the wheel on Sundays to win up to $5,000 cash. Be sure to check out the daily meal specials at Council Oak Cafe. There are exciting monthly giveaways with extravagant prizes. Come and play at One Fire Casino, where it really is okay to play with fire.
Welcome back to Mvskoke Radio here on 1240 The Brew. I'm Gary Fife, sitting here with Principal Chief James Floyd, and talking about the year that we've just passed, and kind of getting a general idea of some of his thoughts there. Let me switch to culture here for a second. There were concerns about a ruling concerning stomp dances, and whether or not they could be held on I guess tribal land. Is that correct? And now that situation has been laid to rest, settled down.
It's well on its way to being laid to rest, and I think in the coming year, that's going to be pretty much an invisible issue. We are also, in regards to culture, we have grounds that are located on private land, and so we've had several grounds who wants to work with us in purchasing that, the nation purchasing that, so that we can preserve it. We're very much supportive of that. We don't want to lose those grounds, and but it puts you into a conflict of tribal-owned grounds property. So that will be addressed. I think that will be addressed soon, and we'll go on, and it'll be a non-issue.
Okay, so you don't see any stomp dances being interrupted then?
No, and I think I think we've laid to rest the issue of, someone trying to take advantage of a dance for fundraising efforts.
Filming it and selling it and profiting from it. While we're in that same arena, there's always been discussions of dangers to the language being lost, and culture going along with it. So what is the tribe looking at in terms of preservation there?
Well, in terms of preservation, I think we've hired a couple new language instructors. They're going out to the Head Starts and the preschools and teaching. We have been in talks with a company to do language, and their initial proposal to us was a little bit more than we expected in terms of money, but we are going to go back with them, and we're already speaking with them now, so that we can essentially have an app on our phones. We can go on our computers, or they can come into the nation's offices and to the library and learn language. We support the teaching of the language in the college. We support it in the communities. We want it to flourish, and I think we have to practice it as well, and including myself. So we all have an interest in this, and I think that what we will see in the coming year will be a product that will be usable by any citizen anywhere in the world, that they can have 24-hour access to language, instruction, and a means that where they can speak and kind of go through the test and look at the accuracy of their language skills, and in the Mvskoke language, even among 11 counties, we have some little dialects that are a little different, and what I call some of the older language and the newer language. And just in my lifetime, I've seen that change. So anyway, I think we will see something significant coming within the first half of 2018.
Great. I am one of the students at the employee noontime classes, and have greatly benefited from those. It was so nice to be able to understand more of the language than Humbuck's J. And it's interesting that our instructor has pointed out how the language has evolved, and having to deal with modern day terms. She calls it Creeklish, I believe. Yeah. Okay. Well, what about our relationships with our neighbors real quick? How are we doing with Tulsa as the new Mayor Bynum been encouraging. We haven't heard much from Mr. Benj down in Governor Fallon's cabinet. So how are we doing in dealing with our state and the city there?
Well, we have ongoing communications with both gentlemen, and they're in different venues. I mean, we can hold large public meetings, but sometimes there are issues that may result in a large public meeting, but the lead up to that are smaller discussions on items, and Mayor Bynum's been open to us, and I think at this point has a greater understanding of the impact of the Mvskoke Creek Nation in the Tulsa economy, in the community, in the culture, and I don't know if that appreciation existed when he came in. I think he had knowledge of it, but I have heard from him and the council of the Tulsa city that's increased. And I think their respect of our nation has increased greatly as well. And, that's a good start. We've got a lot of things that we need to follow up on, but we will. We've had some discussions with them concerning roads and things like that could help us and help the city. So we'll continue to have those. Mr. Benj is kind of wearing two hats at the present time, chief of staff to the governor as well as the liaison to the nations. And so, I see him regularly, speak to him. He's got my phone number and I've got his, so we can talk whenever we need to. He's available. And so he's been very supportive as well regarding the Honey Springs Battlefield that's located in Mvskoke Creek Nation, one that's gaining interest and could possibly become a national park. That's the bigger goal, and it's a state property at this time, and we're talking to them, we're working with them, and seeing how we can support that, because that's significant in our own ancestry, because, our family members, many of them fought in that battle, in one-day battle, but I had my own family that was there, and near some land of my other family. So it's very much deeply tied to the Mvskoke Creek Nation, although you had other tribes of the 5 tribes involved in that. So we want to stay involved with that one as well. And Chris Benj has been important in working with us in the tourism department of the state, and in the tourism department in the state in regard to Fountainhead as well.
The governor hasn't spoken much about us lately, which could be good, could be negative. But how do you see your relationship with her? Is it friendly? Are you all concerned over an issue on different sides?
If we need to talk, we talk. I think that I don't feel uncomfortable at all expressing to her my views. They may be similar to hers, or they may be very different. But she knows that if I'm going to be telling her about a subject, which right now is the budget, and in raising revenue so that we can expand education, or even just bring education up to where it should be. She's heard my views, and they will probably hear those again this week, because I think today they're voting on these raising the oil production tax on legacy wells. But legacy wells are old wells and the lower producing wells. So when you looked at the money that's coming in, $18 million, that's peanuts compared to the overall oil production volume in the state of Oklahoma. So you're letting the higher ones off the hook, and you're going after the lower ones and the older ones. So kind of hear my conversation with the governor about that one, and I think she agrees. She wants some things done. And so our local representatives, local senators, they'll hear my points of view about that. And so that's where we get engaged with the state. And I'm very passionate about that, as you can see. But we got to have things straightened up in the state of Oklahoma. If we're going to attract businesses here, if we're going to improve the health care, the education, they've got to step up as well. And we're willing to work with them.
All right, and about the last 4 minutes we have here, let's toss in the question of dual enrollment. there's an issue involving Chief Hobia down in the southern part of the Creek Nation, holding membership with his local group there, and also within the Mvskoke Creek Nation, and actually running for office. Although that was unsuccessful, but it does raise an interesting issue: is can it be allowed to exist? Other tribes do allow it. This one doesn't.
Yeah, I think it's you go back to the Constitution on that, and and I think the misperception is the principal chief drives all of that, but that's in the court system, and it's with citizenship, and so it's citizenship being a constitutional independent agency. It's like I'm on the sidelines on this topic, and so those two groups are the ones who have that issue to deal with at the present time, and so I think they should be asked about that, and because like I said, I'm on the sidelines on that one, and I have to be because there's separation of powers.
Okay. In about the last minute or two we have, are there any thoughts about running for another term? Surprise!
Yeah, well, I really haven't given that much thought because I really enjoy working for the people, enjoy going out and doing things, and so my focus is so much on that the political part, I just thought, well, okay, one of these days it'll have to be addressed, but I enjoy what I do on a daily basis. And as an example, just a real quick thing, going to the Eufaula dormitory last night and being a part of their Christmas party, and the 68 students that were there, 2 of them graduating the semester early, and we got some great kids, and that was a great event. I mean, they're like my own children, and I love them very much, and so we've got a lot of things to be proud of, and I take enjoyment in that, and being with our citizens just gives me energy, and that's great. I enjoy it, and so I want to thank all of them. I know I can't be everywhere all the time, but when I'm with them, it really fills me up. And so on the further horizon, I'll deal with that when it comes up, and right now I just want to do the best I can for them within the moment.
Okay, I was just trying to get the jump on every other reporter in our department. Now, last couple of minutes, we'll hand back to you. What's the past year been like, and is there anything on the horizon?
Well, again, the master plan has been a big project for us. It's required by statute that we have it the National Council accepts it. It's a template that we will work from. When we send that over to the National Council next month and it becomes more public to everyone, I think our citizens will get excited, because not only does it address economic development, jobs, revenue, but also a coordination of the nation in terms of the service delivery. It puts our campus aligned in a way that people can come to one location, one campus, and get everything done and not go all over town. And it also addresses cultural issues. It addresses the country club and its future, which will be involving culture.
Okay. Well, Chief, we hope that you'll give your future a real good think and let us know what you decide.
Sure, I'd be glad to come back anytime and talk about it. And in the meantime, you guys all have a safe and happy holiday season, and I wish everybody the best.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
We've been speaking here on our program with Principal Chief of the Mvskoke Creek Nation, James Floyd. We want to thank you for listening to our program today, and just say, Mado, Mabohead, it's good.
Oh.
You've been listening to Mvskoke Radio. Join us again next week for more local, tribal, and community news and updates. Mado.